Hello, everybody. Welcome to the very first Narcolepsy Nerd Alert broadcast. We are so excited to have you with us today for the first ever Narcolepsy Nerd Alert broadcast. Today, we will be talking about Narcolepsy Roadmap. And I'm Julie Flygare. I'm the president and CEO of Project Sleep here in Los Angeles, California. And I am joined by, I think this might be her first public introduction, possibly our programs manager who joined Project Sleep's team back in August. I'm so delighted to introduce you guys to Lauren. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, everybody.
And where are you joining us from?
I am in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Very cool. All right. So we're across the country from each other, but Lauren has been a wonderful new addition to Project Sleep's team and really excited to have her helping with this new broadcast series. So let's see. I'm going to go ahead and pull up these slides. Okay, so we're really excited to talk about creating a roadmap for living with narcolepsy today. So nerdy. Before we get started though on the topic, Lauren, I'm going to pass it over to Lauren to just give a few quick reminders.
Okay, so I'm really happy to see everybody and seeing comments from everybody who's watching already. So thank you for that. Few quick reminders before we get started. Please share with us where you're watching from. The first three people to say where they're watching from, which it looks like we already have more than three, are gonna get some awesome Narcolepsy Nerd Alert prizes. So thanks y'all for chiming in with where you're from. As Julie goes through the topic today, please be sure to share, like, ask questions, post comments, anything that's resonating with you. We really want to hear it. Your engagement and shares and likes help us reach more people and raise more awareness. A quick reminder that the Narcolepsy Nerd Alert series is intended for educational and awareness purposes and is definitely not a substitute for medical attention. We want to empower people with information, but if anything about our broadcast today sparks questions that you have about your medical management, please do bring those to your narcolepsy specialist. We're going to have a prompt question that we hope you'll answer in the comments. Please do remember that your comments will stay with the video and are public. So if there's anything you wouldn't want to share with the whole world, please only post things that you want to share publicly. After the broadcast, we're going to create a toolkit that highlights everybody's insights and summarizes our discussion. We're aiming to include some of your quotes and we'll only use your first name. Yeah, so that's pretty much what we've got for housekeeping. So I'm going to turn it back over to Julie and really excited to see what y'all think.
Thank you, Lauren. Yeah, we're a little bit excited. Please also remember that this is kind of an experiment for us. This is brand new. We're hoping to find ways to make a broadcast like this engaging. And so, we're just really excited, but also, be patient with us as we work through creating something new. So just to get started, we developed this graphic, these next few graphics, kind of around the concept that you often get questions perhaps when you are newly diagnosed or adjusting to narcolepsy, that someone might ask you, oh, so you're feeling better now, right? Like, oh, you found your diagnosis, you got treatment, so you're better. And, I think for me at first, that question was really overwhelming and really brought up a lot of kind of anger and not at the people asking, because I know their intentions were in a good place, but I didn't know how to answer because I didn't get better right away. To imagine living with a chronic condition as sort of a linear process where you can just take treatment and you're better, kind of like this line. So we have this graph of, what people think it might look like to feel better with a chronic illness, and then what it actually looks like. So it's not so much of a linear process. It can be pretty overwhelming. And I'd probably suggest that narcolepsy doesn't get better. We get better at coping with narcolepsy. And so being part of this discussion today is, I hope, one of those things that helps us get better as we all try to find new resources and tools for living with narcolepsy. We talked about a theme of a roadmap. And as I was thinking about that concept, as we were putting together the materials, it is kind of a funny thing because a road somewhat suggests that it is a linear process, that you're on one road and that there's the right time and the right moment for everything. And I think what we will talk about today is that, that maybe that's not even the best analogy. It can't quite be one specific linear experience. There's a lot going on. So today's prompt question is, what do you wish you'd known at diagnosis, either for you or for if you have a loved one who has narcolepsy or idiopathic hypersomnia? Please share in the comments the answer to this question. We are going to share what came to mind for us, and what, for me, having been in this community now for 13 years, I end up feeling like there's a lot of overlapping themes and analogies that I hear from many people living with narcolepsy or their loved ones. So as you answer this question, we are going to circle back and share some of your responses. But in thinking about what we could provide to people at diagnosis, this is how we thought about it. First of all, we believe there's a really important starting point for any journey. I promise I won't do roadmap analogies the whole broadcast, but as far as a starting point, we truly believe that education, basic education about the symptoms of narcolepsy, the treatments that are available, and some of the different coping mechanisms that people use, some of that basic education is really important. Almost, I'd say every month, I end up speaking to someone that isn't quite sure they understand what cataplexy is, or hypnagogic hallucinations and sleep paralysis. The definitions can be a little bit confusing. And so we do think that a starting point should always be basic education. And so we are going to create a separate short video along with this one that will go over some of those basics. We didn't want to do it here today with you because it would take, more time of this, and we kind of want to dive into some other aspects of the experience, but we do think that is an important starting point. So definitely wanted to mention education. So I really love this quote, which brings up some of the different aspects of living with narcolepsy or a chronic condition. Living with a chronic condition is an ongoing process of inner negotiation between social and medical needs, shifting between illness on the foreground and wellness on the foreground. And I really love this because it talks about social, medical, and sort of our own inner negotiation. Because we are big nerds over here at Project Sleep, we thought to break down some of what we're going to talk about today into 3 areas. And this is because Lauren and I are big nerds, and this is how some of the literature talks about breaking down experiences for people living with chronic conditions. So we're going to talk about the medical experience, things about managing symptoms, accessing healthcare, doctors and treatments, the social experience, managing your relationships, basically that everyone plays roles in your own life. Beyond being a person with narcolepsy, many of you are mothers or fathers or daughters or sons or, aunts, uncles, your students. You have professional aspects of your life, ambitions, dreams, goals, and, your husband, wife. There's a lot that ends up being a social experience, and how narcolepsy ends up being integrated into that. How do you communicate about it? How do you disclose about narcolepsy? So we're going to talk a little bit about the social experience and then also the internal experience. So these are things that are happening inside your head. Not that that doesn't make them important. They are extremely important, and I think they're underrated. I almost wanted to shift the way that we approach this and go from internal to medical, because I think that often social and internal experience isn't as recognized. But for internal, it's feelings, intrinsic characteristics, your own self-perception of yourself, and what narcolepsy might mean for that self-perception when something new comes into your identity. Stress management and acceptance of the condition. So those are some of the things that are in that area. So when we talk about medical experience, again, these are just some things to get you guys talking and thinking out loud and help us brainstorm. These are not an exhaustive list by any means of important concepts, but these are just some of the things that we thought to get started with. For medical experience, expertise really matters, and not all sleep specialists have the same expertise in narcolepsy or idiopathic hypersomnia. And I think that is unfortunate, of course. We wish there were more specialists in, every major city of this country and around the world, right? But it is important to know that the person who diagnoses you may or may not be a really true expert or have a ton of experience in treating people with narcolepsy. And so I do encourage people to think about getting a second opinion, not in like that we don't believe that, you don't believe the doctor about your diagnosis, maybe that's the case, but just in gathering more information and more opinions. One of the things that makes me always kind of, I don't know, feel a little bit uncertain, but this is the truth about science: is it's an art. Medicine is an art, and part of that, I guess, is that some of the best specialists, even in the country, I'd say, don't always have the same opinions. That's how, varying people's opinions can be. And so I think that's just really important to think about, getting an extra opinion at any point in your journey, and to feel okay about doing that. I think often we think that you're in a relationship with your doctor in which, like, if you were to seek a second opinion, that you were somehow breaking up with them or, causing some sort of, but you are not, dating your doctor. You don't have to worry. It's not a breakup. So just be empowered to pursue more medical attention. Finding optimal treatment with narcolepsy is a journey. I know, okay, I'm sorry I have so many dating analogies, but I think that when you are newly diagnosed, you might want the first treatment to be the right one, somewhat similarly to online dating, which is something I've been dealing with. And of course, the first guy that you meet through online dating, you just really want to be the one, right? Or, the first person you meet. So of course you want it to be the right fit, right? Like, you start this new treatment and that's the one that you hope is it. And that's just not always the case. And I think it's really good to know what else is out there, and to never think about a treatment as going to be something that is for the rest of your life, that you can try new things and see how they impact you for better or worse, and then look about how you might negotiate other things in your life to make a certain treatment a part of it or not over the long term. Incorporating napping, lifestyle changes, and social support. I think that is just really underrated, how much other, aspects of coping can be helpful beyond traditional medications. So these are really important for a lot of different people in different ways. The last concept here we want to talk about is cure culture, which is the idea that in our society, there is an emphasis on feeling better, on getting better, and we're all for, as the point right above that says, we're all for looking for different tools and ways to be better. But there is also this overarching feeling of that we should somehow be able to cure or get fully better. And so I just love this quote from Tony Burnham's book, How to Be Sick, which is a very Buddhist approach to dealing with illness. And she says, "I blame myself for not recovering, as if not regaining my health was my fault, a failure of will somehow, or a deficit of character." And I just think that is really an important part, where there is so much emphasis on doing everything you can to be better, that sometimes that ends up making us feel like we're not doing enough. So I just wanted to pause there and see if, Lauren, did you have anything you want to add to this section, or any comments you want to share at this point?
Yeah, we have really great comments coming in, especially like pertaining to what we're talking about with the medical experience, talking about diagnosis and getting information. Shell says, wishing that they had known that they did have narcolepsy instead of struggling with tiredness and not sleeping. Shelley wishes she'd known sooner and that had known about more treatment options, or that there were more treatment options. Izzy says, I wish I had been warned of how difficult and frustrating it can be. Madison saying, I wish my doctor had actually explained what narcolepsy was and its symptoms, and how much, it would impact her life. Helen says, I wish I knew that it was something actually very serious and not something I could just tough my way through. And other people, Alex says, wish I knew anything more than what I was given by the sleep specialists. Basically got a script and was sent on their way. So just talking to a lot of deficits in the medical experience and gaps that really need to be filled.
That is so helpful. Thank you guys for your input. Gives me chills. There's so many great points there. I forgot what I was going to say. I had one more thing to say based on one of the comments there, but I forget. So that's life. We'll move on. Okay, so talking a little bit about the social experience, such an underrated part, I think, as well. Often I think there is a feeling, I know it was true for me, and I hear it from a lot of people, that they have narcolepsy and they're trying to explain it to others in their life, whether that is to their family members or their peers at school or work, or supervisors, teachers, so many different people to try to explain narcolepsy to, and often we don't quite always understand it or how best to articulate it. And in future broadcasts, we will talk more about communication skills for sure, and best practices and all that, because we're nerdy. But for today, we just want to, kind of emphasize the point that there are going to be people who don't get it, and that's just a really big challenge. And we don't necessarily think we have solutions to every one of these things that we've listed here, but it's an important part of the experience to somewhat be prepared for, I think, and to know that I think over time, you can find new people in your life who might get it, whether that's other people with narcolepsy through some of the great narcolepsy communities that are out there, or even other people who have faced different kinds of adversity. So I know one of my best friends, when I moved to DC, we were in a writing group together, and she had experienced a tragic loss of a daughter in her life. And although those two experiences of having narcolepsy and her losing her daughter at a young age, on its maybe seemed really different, the overlapping experiences, especially the social experiences and the isolation we felt all at once, was very similar. It remains one of my best friends to this day. So I think there is, important to know that not everyone will get it. And that I think no matter how well spoken you can be, and no matter what best practices we share, at the end of the day, some people might never get it. But there will be new people that you will find in your life that do. I have this third bullet, emotional versus a transactional approach, something that has been increasingly important to me to think about. Sometimes we want people to get it in a way that's emotional. We want them to end up maybe seeing the light, that this is such a serious condition, and I'm so sorry you have to deal with it. And you want a big hug and maybe like a good cry, like the moment I had with my dad after attending Narcolepsy Network's conference where he just got it, right? And we had this emotional bond. But I do think there's also something to be said for having with certain people, like in employment or in school situations, having a more transactional approach. And what I mean is that having an HR person, who's never heard of narcolepsy before or doesn't really know what it is, and I need to get an accommodation from them, that I'm not looking for that HR person to get it in the same way that I wanted my dad to get it. But I just need to give them the information necessary in order to get what I need, to be very goal-oriented and very transactional about how I approach interacting with that HR director or, if it's a school administrator about accommodations. And that's really hard for me. I know that when I had HR experiences, sometimes I would walk away from the most basic meeting with the HR person, like checking out the different rooms where we could put a bench so I could nap. No matter what, I would walk back to my desk and I would often cry because I felt exposed. I felt vulnerable in that moment. But and so the emotion is always there, but just thinking about some of those is that I wasn't trying to get the HR person to get it in the same way that maybe I want like my own family and friends to, but just kind of going with transactional, get what we need here and move on. And so limited energy expenditure, or the spoon theory, I think this is a really wonderful concept that can really help to articulate some of the experience of living with narcolepsy that isn't limited to the basic symptoms. So often when I've been in relationships or even with my family, there's a thought like when you're trying to plan what to do and make plans together, you might think, well, it's something like going to a comedy concert or comedy club at night. You might not like be worried that you're going to have a episode of excessive sleepiness or an episode of cataplexy at the comedy club. Maybe you're actually just like don't quite have enough energy to like do that on top of going to a different thing the next night and all this. So I think it's just important to think that beyond the basic symptoms and your experience with those, it's also okay to know that living with a chronic condition can mean, and again, if this doesn't resonate with your experience, that's fine. But for some people, that might mean that there's limited energy expenditure. Or the spoon theory is a concept developed by a woman with a chronic condition. And if you're not familiar with that already, please look that up. So for me, with some friends and family, I could say, they might ask if I want to do something. I could just say, oh, I don't have the spoons today, which is just a really helpful way for me to say that I didn't have enough energy for all the things, which our culture very much, wants us to think that we should be doing all the things all the time. So creating boundaries and knocking them down, I think, are really important for your social relationships. When I lived in Washington, D.C., I set a boundary that I would only drive 45 minutes. Could I drive longer than 45 minutes? Probably. Certain times a day, certain medication, depending on what I've eaten, all that, right? But by creating that boundary of 45 minutes, as that I could just tell my friends that, it just made it more clear that if it was longer than that, that we would have to figure out what else, who else was going to drive. And that just helped like create a lot of peace for me and not having to worry about all the details of something like a longer drive. And so, since then, when I talk about creating boundaries, it's also good to know that you can knock those boundaries down when it makes sense for you. And so I gained more confidence in my ability to know when I need to pull over. And so living in Los Angeles, where you can't get very far in 45 minutes either, I was able to change what those boundaries are, but I think they can just be helpful sometimes to present publicly to other people. So that's just one idea. And building a strong no muscle. I think a lot of people talk about this, is that we have to prioritize our time very carefully. And that can be very challenging for a lot of people, people that are caring and want to do lots of different things, and we have interests and hobbies and people that we want to see. So saying no to things is hard, but I think can be important. So the thing that I like to explain about this is that we don't always need to explain our no. So if you have to write a friend and say, I can't make it tonight, I actually believe that you can just leave it at that, and you don't have to always over explain why. And because I do feel that sometimes that it depends on the situation, right? But if I'm going to explain that further and say it's because I might have cataplexy, da 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 da, or I've had a really rough day, I can't quite make it because I don't, this or that, then I think I'm looking for social support back from that person. And if that's the appropriate relationship, that's okay. But for certain people and certain things, especially in more professional environments, I try not to explain my no. You can just say, I can't make it. Thank you for thinking of me. And because the reason I say that is because sometimes if I've over-explained or I've gone into the reasoning, I'm looking for a response. I'm looking for a thoughtful response. And if I don't get that, that can be really disappointing. So anyway, that's just another concept there. And just one more quote. I love this quote, and it kind of bridges between the two different topics we have, is social and internal experience. But I can't find who actually said this online, but it's always stuck with me. I have this weird relationship with my chronic illness where I spend 75% of my time trying to pretend it doesn't exist, and the other 25% trying to explain that it does exist to a bunch of people who don't believe me. So just kind of your internal experience of possibly trying to, pretend this isn't happening, but then the other percentage of your time, like, this is real to other people. So just want to check in with Lauren and see what's coming in. Any extra thoughts?
Oh yeah, we have so many people chiming in about their social experience and really powerful comments here. Catherine has said she wishes that she would have had someone else to talk to that understood when she was diagnosed at 9 years old. She had to do her own research to find out what was going on with her because nobody really understood or knew. Alex saying that, he wishes that they'd known about the importance of connecting to support networks and how much counseling and professional help for acceptance would have been beneficial. We've got other folks saying, that a lot of people just really don't understand that narcolepsy isn't a choice. It's not convenient to live with excessive sleepiness all the time. It's not that it's nice to just be able to sleep whenever you want. Then we have Heidi, whose daughter, it looks like Heidi's daughter has narcolepsy. And so Heidi's supporting her daughter and respecting when she says no, when she needs more naps, and saying, as support people, we have to keep reminding ourselves that she's doing what is best and healthy for her, so that loved ones with narcolepsy have a safe zone of unconditional love and support, which is so meaningful when you feel not understood, just to have people who really unconditionally love and support you. And then Katie kind of echoes that and says, it's definitely difficult to lose people and friends at the beginning, but over time, it tends to leave us with really meaningful and fulfilling relationships. Those who you can be confident you can count on and who simply accept you as you are.
Wow, it's wonderful. And I think, for those loved ones that are joining us, thank you, Heidi, for that comment and for supporting your daughter. I feel like often I hear from loved ones, when I do hear from loved ones of people with narcolepsy, and they're looking to learn more. They want more resources. It just gives me so much hope, because I think that interest is more valuable than anything they could actually learn from any resources. It's that drive to learn more, that desire to support your loved one. Like, that is so meaningful. It's meaningful to even me as a fellow, like, not even being that person's daughter, but like, it's meaningful to me to hear that a mother just wants to try to support their loved one. So thank you to all the supporters that are, trying to get more educated and more involved and help your loved one. That's just amazing. We love you guys. Yay. So I think it's a really wonderful bridge to talking about the internal experience. I think it was Alex who mentioned about, kind of like knowing more about thinking about acceptance and some of the internal experiences. And all these are very intertwined, right? A lot of our social dynamics end up affecting our internal experience and back and forth. But as mentioned in that last quote, this concept of pretending narcolepsy doesn't exist. I don't know if you guys have been there. There's no way probably on Facebook to like raise your hand, but like who's been there that when you were first diagnosed, you just wanted to kind of pretend it wasn't there. That was me. I think that I thought that if I somehow put narcolepsy in a corner or brushed it under the rug, I was going to take my treatments, but I wasn't going to let it be any other bigger part of my life. Okay. It was just going to be this small little compartment. And if I did that I was somehow stronger than narcolepsy and that I was winning. I Julie was not letting narcolepsy get the best of me. No way. Over time, I think I realized that approach actually made me weaker and not prepared to be the best version of myself with narcolepsy. And so by opening up to learn more and think more about my narcolepsy and meet other people and become more engaged, it did not make me weaker. It did not mean that narcolepsy was beating me. It actually meant that I was creating a stronger version of myself and being the best that I could be with narcolepsy. And that was actually truly winning. So I don't know if that, resonates with people, but I think that was a big part of a transition experience for me. Another concept that I definitely talk about in my book and like to bring up in presentations is that sometimes your biggest critic is living in your own head. I think we've all probably been there. And I know for me, before I had narcolepsy, sort of like negative self-talk was a form of motivation. I motivated myself through negative self-talk. I would say, gosh, you're not doing well enough. You got to get out there and go for that run, and that was okay. It worked well enough until I had narcolepsy and I found that beating myself up in my own head, scolding myself for every misstep, it no longer worked because I felt that I didn't have support from other people the way I wanted. And then if my biggest critic was my own head, like it was just kicking me when I was down, is how I felt. And so I just want to bring that up and think about how you speak to yourself, if as much as you can. I know people talk about meditation or mindfulness. I really like the concept of mindfulness. And there's some really neat stuff. I'm forgetting the name of it. We will definitely put this in the eventual toolkit about learning to recognize your own critic in your head and talk back to it. So it's a really cool theory that has been really important for me in my life in general. So then the space between health and sickness, I think that there's a lot of inner negotiation of thinking, especially with narcolepsy, that I think in our society, there's a concept that we're either healthy or we're feeling sick. The idea of a sick day at work means that you're so incapacitated that you just can't make it at all, right? And I find living with narcolepsy is living in the gray between those two things, health and sickness. And it's not always so clear whether I needed to take a sick day from work, that the symptoms would come and go. Some days I might feel terrible in the morning and then end up having more energy in the afternoon and the evening. Other days, maybe I started great and then, ended up with a lot of symptoms later in the day. So it just wasn't always that predictable and didn't feel that it fit into concepts of I'm healthy today, I'm feeling great, got it all together, or I'm completely sick, I'm in bed, I can't move, right? And so I don't know if that concept resonates with you guys, but I think for me, I ended up feeling that to give myself grace or to give myself the benefit of the doubt, sometimes taking sick days, even though I wasn't sure if I was fully sick enough to do so. I love that concept of like a mental health day too, for similar reasons. Is not necessarily that I'm in bed and have a fever and can't move, but that it's good to take rest days sometimes. I also feel a lot of the internal experience for people, especially newly diagnosed, is getting caught up in future thoughts, and trying to center people in what they can do now and not in fears of the future. There is a concept that true suffering is in our fears of future experiences as opposed to things that are actually happening now. And I think that when you're newly diagnosed, you might think, oh my gosh, I can't get my symptoms under control with the treatment. The first drug didn't work and I'm not cured. And now I won't be able to go to the grad school program I want, or I won't be able to drive in 4 years, or, I'm not gonna be able to take on that career role. Those kind of thoughts, I think I try to suggest that you need to see where things go, because there's just so much progress that can happen over time. And especially as you try new treatments and different approaches and find what works best for you, that optimal approach, which is never perfect, but try not to make decisions about your future. And as much as you can, try to let that future stuff happen when it happens and stick in the now and what you can control now. And I think that's sort of one of the loveliest things that I've seen recently is the universal law of impermanence. It's a Buddhist concept called anicca. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but that everything is changing or evolving, and that's for better or worse. And I think what gives me hope is that my experience with narcolepsy really has evolved so much over time. And so those first, I'd say 2 years for me, narcolepsy took up a big portion of my headspace. All right, one more roadmap analogy. I'm sorry, but I thought of this yesterday. I feel like when I was first living with narcolepsy, it was like I was listening to Google Maps or road maps. You have a navigation system on in your car, and you're trying to have a conversation at the same time. So you're trying to talk to the person next to you, and the navigation's turn right in 1,000 feet, turn right. And you're like, oh, so distracting, go away. That is how I felt. Like I felt like you're trying to go through your life with narcolepsy and continue forward. And then all at once it's like, turn left, turn right. And it was so overwhelming at first. Narcolepsy took up so much headspace. It was so distracting that it was hard to feel like, how was I going to manage this over the long term? I found that over time, it took up less headspace, that some of those things became much more routine, right? Narcolepsy didn't get better, I got better, but things became more routine. And it just didn't consume as much of my time as it did the first few years. And so we quieted that navigation system a little bit for me. And that's really been part of what I like to share with people when they're newly diagnosed, that I know it's overwhelming right now, and it might be for a while longer, but it might not be exactly like this, how it is right now for you over time. Just have a little nice quote about this from one of my favorite podcasts. We're going to share some resources and stuff at the end, but here's just a quote I love. This is a planet full of people evolving. And it's from the This Is Not What I Ordered podcast. And it was Allison Sittinger, I guess, who said that. So I just think that is such an important thing to remember, that we are always evolving. Lauren, any comments and questions?
Yeah. So everybody again has really insightful comments talking about your inner critic, and Rochelle saying that you really can't bully yourself into doing something that your body just can't do. So that negative self-talk will eventually turn into a negative spiral if you keep trying to push yourself. And then Madison and Alex and Lily all made comments about, being fearful of the future, finding it difficult to stay in the present. And and really needing to grieve the loss of your old self, and how that's a process. And then other people talking about different ways of coping. And we talked about meditation, mindfulness, and that doesn't work for everybody. I believe it was Madison and Sana, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, saying, meditation and mindfulness can be difficult, but other things can work, like Sana says, dance, which is awesome. So whatever works is whatever the best thing is for you is awesome. And then, yeah, so just talking about the internal processes of recognizing your own needs and coming to terms with the diagnosis, grieving the loss of your old self. Just wonderful comments. Thank you.
Yeah, that's such a great point about the sense of your identity, and that maybe you lost a piece of that, and grieving that old self. I definitely felt that. And it's just, I think, really under-recognized, even how much, when you're newly diagnosed, it's not like anyone even brings you like flowers or, balloons or sends you cards. And yet something has shifted. And often it's not as visible, right? I know when I was diagnosed, I actually, I'd always been on a diet my whole life, pretty much since I was like 13. And I'd always been a little bit, chubbier or whatever. And when I started the narcolepsy medications, I lost some weight. So I actually kind of looked better than I ever had by certain standards, which I don't want to probably, whatever. It's a whole different thing. But so externally, I actually looked probably a little bit healthier by some people's standards. And so, but this time my internal experience was I was not feeling well. And I was, trying to figure out what narcolepsy meant to me and all of that experience. So, just creating more spaces and places to be able to talk about those things and those experiences, I think, are important. I think journaling can be helpful too. I love the concept of dance. It truly is whatever works for you. Journaling, writing, expressing yourself in different ways, therapy, support groups, there's just so many different opportunities depending on what you like. So thank you for those comments. And I think I just want to go through a few more resources here. And then I know we're going to circle back and see if people had answers to the original prompt question. If, we wanted to just highlight a few of those responses. So, but first, let me just go through a few resources. I think it's really important to know there are patient organizations out there. Project Sleep is one of them. So you're connected with us, but there are others that are doing fantastic work in this space as well. And so in the United States, some of the major leading organizations are the Hypersomnia Foundation, which is just, all of these have such great resources. And the Hypersomnia Foundation is really focused on idiopathic hypersomnia, but also goes beyond that. And as we are all doing right now, they're doing more online because of the pandemic. So check out, some of their different events. Narcolepsy Network is another wonderful organization in the US, and they are doing, I know, online support groups right now, and also some different mini conferences, I believe. And they have a wonderful youth ambassador program that, helps to train young people to be ambassadors and raising awareness. Obviously, you're here, so you're familiar with Project Sleep, hopefully, and our programming. And, we'll be talking more probably next month about becoming a narcolepsy advocate and our efforts in the advocacy space and awareness as well. So we have the Rising Voices of Narcolepsy program that we hope that some of you will sign up for this summer to train you on sharing your story with narcolepsy to raise awareness. Wake Up Narcolepsy is another wonderful organization, and they have a fantastic podcast that I have on another slide called Narcolepsy 360, along with doing some educational events throughout the year. And they also host online support groups. They have quite a robust structure around those support groups online. So I think that's a really powerful program that they've taken on, and hope that you will join them for a support group meeting. There's international organizations for our friends around the world. I'm not sure if people are tuning in internationally today, but I didn't list all of them. I know there's 27 different organizations that are co-leading the World Narcolepsy Day. And so I have all those listed on Project Sleep's World Narcolepsy Day webpage. You can see all of those around the world. A lot in Europe. There's Narcolepsy Africa. There is a group in Japan and Australia and Argentina and Brazil. So really almost every continent. And so, yeah, it's just really important to know that those organizations are out there, and a lot of them have really great programming. Because we're nerds, we love books, possibly. I don't know. There's different forms of nerdiness. I do love books. So I just listed some of my favorites here, some that are narcolepsy specific and some that are not. How to Be Sick, I mentioned that one by Toni Bernhard. It is a Buddhist approach. You know, she used a lot of Buddhism terms, which I just think is really neat to learn about because I love learning. Sleepyhead by Henry Nichols is a fantastic book about his experience with narcolepsy, but also about the science of narcolepsy. So nerdy. He is a wonderful writer. He is, a science writer by profession, and Sleepyhead is his book about sleep and narcolepsy and the science and his experience. So check that out. Surviving and Thriving with an Invisible Chronic Illness by Alana Jacqueline. I think that Alana is just a witty writer and has a great perspective, and I absolutely love her book that she's published. There is No Good Card for This by Kelsey Crow, sorry. This is one of the books that has meant the most to me in my own understanding of how a chronic condition is one of many things that makes people feel kind of socially awkward and not know what to do or what to say. And there are many different areas that this book talks about, from chronic illness to infertility to grieving the loss of a loved one. And it really touches on a lot of different aspects of, some of that social disconnect that happens when there's major adversity in someone's life. So definitely recommend that. It's also very visually stunning. She worked with an amazing graphic designer on that book. Waking Matilda is Claire Criff's amazing memoir from her experience as a mother living with a daughter diagnosed with narcolepsy at a very young age. So definitely recommend Claire's book about that experience. And then, of course, my own, I guess, Wide Awake and Dreaming is my personal memoir. And, honestly, every day there's always new stuff that's coming up on Amazon. So another good thing is always just to search on Amazon for the word narcolepsy and see what you find and see what you like and let us know. So additional resources include Narcolepsy 360 podcast by Wake Up Narcolepsy is a wonderful new podcast they've been doing. I think it's their third season now. Super cool. And a lot of different perspectives from researchers to people with narcolepsy and loved ones. This Is Not What I Ordered. That's the podcast I mentioned a few minutes ago by Lauren Selfridge. Lauren is a therapist by training or by profession, and also a woman living with multiple sclerosis. And so she has a podcast featuring many different people with different chronic conditions. And I think just her therapist perspective really is a cool perspective that she brings as a host of that. Also, Lauren's website, if you look up This Is Not What I Ordered, her website also has a link to therapists that consider themselves having an expertise in the chronic illness space. So not that might necessarily, that's not comprehensive across the country or whatever, but she is trying to collect a list of therapists that believe they have an expertise in that area, which I think is really exciting because that's something that I think could be helpful for some people to have a therapist that has that area of expertise. There's a narcolepsy chat or NChat on Twitter every month. I believe it's the first Saturday of every month at 5 p.m. Eastern. And so you just kind of follow along with that hashtag, and they have great questions every month, prompt questions, and it's a good way to connect with people around the world. And also just like really encourage people to follow the hashtag narcolepsy on Instagram or TikTok. I'm not personally on TikTok, but I hear there's some great narcolepsy content on there. So, it's just always so encouraging how wonderful and how creative people are increasingly in creating content that has to do with their experience. And so, oops, I just have that. I guess, okay, so we wanted to see if there was, check in with Lauren and see if there's more answers to this question that we might share.
Yeah, so we shared some of these answers earlier, but seeing some others pop up. So Jen wishes she had known about her diagnosis or had gotten a diagnosis much sooner, and wishes she had known that narcolepsy with cataplexy was a disorder so that she could have spoken up to doctors sooner about her symptoms. And then, sorry, I'm scrolling. So Tom Trudy says, I wish I had known that the majority of society, spouses, and friends truly don't understand that narcolepsy is not a choice, and that insomnia is also a major part of narcolepsy, despite the fact that they're always extremely exhausted. And then Issy, gotta find it again, sorry. Excuse me, I had technical difficulties earlier.
Even nerds can have technical difficulties?
It's true. Let's see. Well, let's see. We'll wrap up the wish I had known. Katie says that even after being diagnosed for 17 years, I still recently had to relearn that my treatment will always be a journey and that I will never have arrived at a final destination. So I think that speaks very strongly to our roadmap analogy. And we appreciate all your comments. It also looks truly like a lot of people have found your book to be a very helpful and supportive resource, and that their families have been reading them too to help support and understand what it's like to live with narcolepsy.
Thank you, guys. I just believe in storytelling, and that's why we've created the Rising Voices program now, so that we can share your stories and help you find, not everyone will get it, but there are certain techniques that someone uses in writing a book or in building a story. And we're just huge dorks about that and love those, utilizing some of those best practices in helping you frame your story and in a way that will increase empathy and decrease stigma. So it is just an honor to have written the book. And I guess it's been 9 years now since it came out. So it feels, kind of like a long time ago in a way, the story. But I'm so glad I wrote it, and that it's meaningful for you and for loved ones. I know even for my own mother, it was really helpful. So I think there's something for the format. And so we've brought a lot of those best practices into the Rising Voices program. So my last pitch there, if you want to increase, your ability to tell your story, because everyone's story is like, there's just so many different ways that people share things and so many different experiences, and they're also important. So, so we're just trying to do that through Rising Voices now. So next month, let me start, sorry. Please, if you haven't already signed up for our e-updates, specifically for Narcolepsy Nerd Alert, please do. we're creating in addition to Project Sleep's like big listserv of everyone that likes to know what we're doing, the Narcolepsy Nerd Alert updates are going to be more specific to that group and allow us to email you, about these upcoming broadcasts, to send you the toolkits afterwards and the video links. And so please do. And if we have new announcements, because we really do believe this is a community of people that are interested in learning, and please do sign up for the update specifically for that. And you can find that in the link in the description of this video. And again, please do share this video because you just never know when you're going to reach someone that needs to know what narcolepsy is. And if this could possibly be that catalyst for someone, that's just an amazing thing. The toolkit will be coming soon. We hope to turn this around. This is a new thing that we're doing. So hopefully in a week or two, we will get that toolkit out along with these videos. And please save the date for next month. This month, we really want to focus on, your personal journey. And we do believe that it's really important to take care of yourself the best that you can first before doing some other things like advocacy or awareness. That's the idea of put on your oxygen mask first. You need to make sure that your health and your, emotional space can be taken care of for you first. And then I believe advocacy and some of that is really wonderful, but is a next step. So next month we move into that next step of becoming a narcolepsy advocate and advocating for yourself and others. And so we're really looking forward to that discussion and the discussions in the future. Oh, also, when you do sign up for the news updates, you have the opportunity to write in what future topics you'd like us to cover. So we've, decided on the first 6 for this year, but we have many more to have. So please, when you do sign up, you can tell us what topics you'd like us to possibly cover. And I think with that, I don't know if there's anything else, any questions that you're seeing, Lauren, or.
Well, we just want to make sure everybody knows how to sign up for the updates. Like Julie said, the link is in the description of this broadcast. And if you have other questions, please feel free to send us a message or visit our website just get in contact with us. We'd love to hear from you and always happy to help.
All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in for this very special first broadcast. And we hope that you stay well, stay safe, and stay nerdy. Uh-oh, just came up with that one. And we will see you again next month. Also on this Sunday, we do have another story sharing session to hear Amanda's story. Amanda is an Olympic weightlifter, and she is working on becoming a veterinarian with narcolepsy. So please do tune in on Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern here on our Facebook page to hear Amanda's story. Okay, guys, we will see you again soon. Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, everybody. Bye.